Hello, everybody. Something a little bit different today. I'm sat down with Laura, who has a son with ADHD, and we just want to just have a little chit chat about the condition and about how she finds things, how her son finds things, and just hope that we, raise awareness and do some good, and we can try and help anybody out there. So, hi Laura.
Hi.
Thank you very much for doing this. I
No
really do
problem.
appreciate it. So really, we just wanted to sort of go into. Sorry about this. We've got Winnie. We've got another one here. Um, what really? So about Fletcher, your
Yeah,
son.
yeah,
How old is he now? If you can tell us a little bit about him,
yeah.
when you maybe found that there were certain things that might be different from his peers,
Yeah.
from his friends, and yeah, we'll genuinely just go
Okay.
from there.
So Fletcher's 9. Um, he's always been quite what we'd class as oversensitive. So he'd cry at the littlest of things. We just thought he were over emotional.
Yeah,
But then when he started playing football, I think he was about 6. If he got tackled, he'd lay on the floor till it were acknowledged that he'd been fouled.
yeah,
His coach would have to come over, rub his leg, get him back up,
yeah.
and he'd be crying. And it would, the injustice there, but we just weren't picking up on it. And it would just every week, and we'd have parents say, "Oh, he needs to just let it go," and run it off, let it go. And I'm like, I know. Or
Easier said than
if
done.
yeah, or if he did a bad tackle, we had we did have opposition parents that would shout at him. So because we had a couple of seasons of opposition parents being quite aggressive, we thought he were a little bit traumatized. So sometimes
Right,
how we did react on the field, we thought we're down to that.
right.
So his over emotions there, we used to be like, oh, it's because it's in fight or flight mode. He's waiting for someone to kick off
Yeah,
with him again.
yeah.
So we always put it down to that. And then basically last Christmas time, things were getting a bit bad with football where he'd started, when he were frustrated on the pitch, he'd tell his actual own teammates, oh, pass me the ball, you're not passing, why are you passing? And then, sometimes it might be you're an idiot
Yeah,
and then obviously some of the parents were probably not very happy with that. And I think there were a couple of complaints made to the coach.
right.
So we had like a Zoom call with his coaches and it was brought up. And, I did mention that, Fletcher weren't the only one that sometimes can be a bit negative, but it came across that he was probably the worst one.
Okay.
And I just said, I think as parents and as coaches, we couldn't have been more consistent with him. So when these things were happening, we dealt with it there and then. We were consistent and it wasn't, nothing was changing.
Right.
Anyway, he started feeling a little bit like, oh, I don't know if, he's really wanted in the team anymore.
Yeah.
And it was quite upsetting. And then
Yeah.
I just started looking into, well, my sister actually said, I think he might have ADHD. And I said, no, I think he's just a boisterous boy because I did look at ADHD of just being hyperactive. Don't get me wrong, Fletcher can be, but not consistently. So
Yeah.
I just thought, no, he's acting like this at football because of his traumas from these, parents and things like that. And then when I did actually look into it, I couldn't believe that there were so many traits, and I
Yeah.
actually made a list. I compiled a massive list, things of, Fletcher can't open a fridge without feeling sick. He can't, smells of a fridge, just cooked chicken, not necessarily nasty smells.
No.
So that's a trait, and I didn't know.
Mm.
You know,
But you only know what you
we
know,
only know what we
don't
know.
you?
So
It's
I compiled this list. School had never rung me or ever had us in about his behaviour because he's not necessarily naughty.
so more inattentive in school then.
Yeah, I put it down to maybe masking
Right. Yeah.
because I thought, well, they've never contacted me. Are they gonna? If I go in to speak to them, are they gonna laugh me out of the classroom? That's how I felt. I mentioned it to my husband, and he was like, he's absolutely not got ADHD, but again, he wouldn't look at the traits.
Right.
So I did at the time feel quite
I
lonely in
bet.
it because
Yeah.
I was thinking, I genuinely think I've hit the nail on the head here, but there's only my sister that sort of agrees.
That's one thing I would say, Laura, is that if you feel as a parent that something doesn't feel right with your child,
Yeah,
then I would listen to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because like I remember I thought that Jude had it for years, or at least something.
Yeah.
And and other people are like, no, he's just having a bad day,
Yeah.
or he's just not slept well,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And then you just sort of put it to one side,
Yeah.
and you're just like, right, okay,
Just
carry
wait for
on,
the
carry
next
on.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and that is what I would say to anybody listening,
Yeah,
is
definitely.
that, listen, go, trust your gut, trust your
Absolutely.
gut, look into it, research, like do whatever you need to do, because knowledge is power. As cliche as that sounds, when you've got knowledge and you understand what's going on, you have more sympathy, you have more empathy, you have more understanding. That's a ripple effect out to your friends, your family, your peers. It can never ever be a bad thing. So I would definitely, I'd be, encouraging you to get looking. And if it's something that's resonating with you right now, look into it a bit more, and you'll feel empowered knowing that you're taking control.
Absolutely.
So from there, Laura, so it's been quite recent then, in the last sort of 12 months.
Yeah, so I did a bit of a naughty thing because my husband at the time didn't agree. But again, he'd not looked at the information. I think if he had have, then he would have definitely have agreed.
Yeah.
But at the time, again, I think he just had this, in his mind, ADHD, it's just, sort of naughty boy syndrome, hyperactive, and Fletcher doesn't fit necessarily all the time, those boxes. So I decided I wasn't going to go on a waiting list for 2 years for him, and that I'd just go private and get it done. And if it came out he wanted, I'd done it, and I don't have to tell him.
I love that. I love it.
So I
that's talking, that's taking control of the situation.
At the end of the day, he's my son, and I wanted to do what's best for him. And the thing is, I went online and I researched a load of private companies, and I chose one, and I signed him up, and I paid for everything, and I filled it all out. I even went to school on my own, spoke to the teacher, who then actually said, so I went in with my list of traits, and she said, well, he does actually display quite a few of those in school, and no one had ever said, because it wasn't necessarily affecting his work. So she did say that through the day he can be quite verbal, he can sometimes be fidgety in his seat, but he doesn't get up and walk around the classroom disturbing anyone.
Right.
So she'd never had to mention it to me. One thing that I'd not picked up on that they'd not told me before was that sound. So when they'd been learning with musical instruments in the class, it was hurting his ears so much that he was actually sitting out of class, wasn't partaking, and they'd not told him that.
Never told you.
So, and the school had actually ordered him some ear defenders. So there were little things that were happening at school. So school actually, even though I was so worried about going in and thought I'd be laughed out the classroom because they'd never rung me about bad behaviour, it isn't just about bad behaviour. Fletcher isn't a naughty child, but sometimes his reactions can come that way.
Yeah.
So, once she was more than happy to help fill in the form, and so I sent the school form off. His coach was amazing. He filled the form in, and I sent it all off. And obviously we had the assessment, and it came out that he had the combined type, which is both, which totally makes sense.
Inattentive and hyperactive.
Yeah. And then from there, once we sort of, football had found out this, his coach has been massively on board, to be fair to him, because I can imagine I really do know how difficult it must be to deal with him.
Yeah, when they've got another 20 odd kids as
well.
They've
got other kids to deal with, and Fletcher can storm off the pitch. They might not have enough players if he does that. And it's finding out his triggers.
Yeah.
And we've really come together and worked on what those triggers are and how we can, sort of stop him being triggered, really. But it doesn't always work.
No.
But the fact that, he's on board, and his coach has picked up on things before himself, where what we've realised is if Fletcher's subbed through the game, he thinks he's done something wrong. And I think it's that trauma again of maybe being brought off after,
So then that goes into another trait of ADHD, which is RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Yeah.
It's a big part of ADHD, and it can affect children and adults in lots of ways in their everyday life. Like it really does have a big impact, doesn't it?
Well, he feels things physically. So if he's brought off through the game, and it might be with all good intentions that the coach is seeing he's getting really frustrated, and it's better to maybe bring him off for 5 minutes so he can calm down. That's a great idea. But to Fletcher, he's thought, oh, I've done nothing wrong. Why am I being subbed? So he might storm off then. But what we've decided to do, and his coach noticed this, is let's sub him after a quarter. You know, when we're coming off and having a team talk, he can sub, not go back on, so he don't feel it's like he's been brought off throughout the match. So little things like that
makes a big difference.
Yeah, and the reason Fletcher gets frustrated at football in the games are if he perceives, should I say, that he's not being passed the ball, he feels rejected by his teammates. So he'll be screaming rather than like, come on, yeah, out, Fletcher's, you know. He'll say, what, give me the ball, oh, you're an idiot. And then the way he reacts, obviously people then don't want to pass him the ball, his teammates, because he's reacting like that to them. So it were a really vicious cycle at one point, you know, and I can imagine parents standing on sidelines thinking, oh my God, Fletcher's off on one again, he's just called my son an idiot and whatever. Without that diagnosis, I think it was, you know,
he's naughty.
I think they probably were thinking that. And we get on really well with all the parents, and I would think they would probably be able to approach me. So anyway, now we've got this diagnosis. You know, I did let them all know straight away that when he does get frustrated, he can't help it to an extent that, you know, there's no signal telling him to calm down and not overreact. You know, they aren't meant not to pass you the ball. They're not rejecting you. He's not getting that signal that says,
in his brain.
Think before you speak, or, you know, don't react that way. You know, if he's badly tackled, he might react badly to the child that's badly tackled him without thinking, well, actually, that child was just going for the ball. He didn't want to hurt me. He will say that he has wanted to hurt me, and he will genuinely believe that someone's wanted to hurt him. So again, that triggers him. You know, and it might be he might be getting stormed off, or if he feels that we're a free kick and the referee hasn't given it, wow, that's, you know, he will say to the referee, that's a free kick. The referee, depending on how he reacts with him, if the referee thinks that's a child bad-mouthing him, back-chatting, he might get cross with him. That triggers him. So what we've done recently is, so James, who's the head coach at Fletcher's football, I think about 3-4 weeks ago, rang me and his dad and said, look, I've been really worrying about Fletcher. Fletcher's played for James for nearly 4 seasons now.
And this is for what team?
So this is White Rose, All-Stars and Yorkshire. So James sort of heads up both.
James Rock, And
we'd had an incident on the Sunday where an actual child had punched Fletcher on the pitch because the child were getting frustrated that they were losing, which is completely understandable. And I think it fouled Fletcher, and Fletcher had said, oh, you're getting stressed because you're losing. So then this kid had like pushed him, and so Fletcher had like gone like this, winding him up, and the kid actually punched him. So at the time we couldn't believe it because Fletcher didn't react. Now that is not like him usually, he'd react badly to it. So the game finished and everything was fine, and on the way home I'm so proud of you, for your coaches are proud of you. You didn't hit him back, and you know, you reacted so well to it. When we got home, he just burst into tears and he was hysterical, and he just said, I'm the problem. You know, there's always an issue at football because of me. No one's going to want to play with me because there's always a problem when I play. And he was hysterical about it. I think maybe the shock of being hit and then... And he couldn't take the positive praise from it because he just said, I just feel so bad. It's always my fault. Something always happens. Well, I actually videoed it without him knowing because I want people to see the other side of him, because I think a lot of people see quite a cocky, arrogant child sometimes because he is good at sports.
You said
and
he
was. And I think he does come across quite confident. Then they're not seeing the side that when he gets home he feels safe. We're getting these
your vulnerable
meltdowns,
side and the meltdowns and everything.
So I videoed it and I did send it to his coach just to say, look, this is the other side to him that people might not always see.
That's a really good idea, Laura.
So James did ring and say, look, I've been up worrying since I think 5 a.m. this morning. Can I come out and see you to discuss what we can do?
That's really decent.
It was really lovely. And
really, really decent.
So because we'd actually got to a point where we were like, should we stop football? Because, you know, there seems to be something all the time. You know, and James just said, I think you'd be letting him down if you stopped him playing. He's a great player. You know, I genuinely think you'd be letting him down. And we said, I just don't feel like that at the minute.
No.
You know, there's constantly something. So he came out to our house, actually, and he sat down with Fletcher and asked Fletcher a few questions, what do you think would be best? And I think sometimes Fletcher doesn't always know what his triggers are.
No.
Fletcher doesn't always know when he's getting frustrated.
He's
It's clear
9
to everyone
years
else.
old.
Yeah. It's clear to everyone else. We can see it and we're on edge.
Yeah.
But it's like, what's best to do if we bring him off? Is he going to kick off? Is he going to take it the wrong way?
Yeah.
So we came up with a few things, and then we had a chat with James afterwards, and I explained the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and I said he feels pain physically.
Yeah.
So that rejection, it actually hurts him.
Yeah.
So if he's not passed the ball, even if he's perceived that it could be passed to him and they don't, it hurts. So I said, and that's why he overreacts, and he feels like nobody wants to be my friend, and why don't they? And I said, and then he's thinking about that rather than the game.
Yeah, he's in his head. He's in his head.
Yeah.
And it's like, as well as like, I remember being on that course with you recently, and we were talking, and the course leader was saying that sometimes they might perceive that they're being bullied or they're being picked on, but actually it's just a bit of banter.
Yeah.
But they don't pick up on that. They don't pick up on that.
Because they feel like they're being criticised.
They feel like they're being criticised, and then, like you said, it physically hurts them. And, it's it really does affect them, and that's hard to understand, and that's hard for their friends to understand that at that age, isn't it?
I think they don't understand.
No.
I don't think, if I could explain it to Fletcher, I don't think he'd quite understand it. So I think for children at that age as well to understand.
It's a lot.
So Fletcher had put together, from school had actually said, would it be a good idea for Fletcher to do like a presentation on his ADHD to sort of explain it?
Fantastic.
So we sat down together and we made this presentation up, and James, the coach, is actually going to do a Zoom call with the parents and the players to present this presentation.
Wow.
So that they can see why he does react to them sometimes, which isn't a great reaction, but they might understand, Fletcher's shouting at me again, I'll just ignore him. And I do think, because a lot of the players he plays with, he has played with them since he was 6.
Right.
He's 9 now, nearly 10. I do think they have got used to him, Alex Fletcher. I genuinely do. And, when outside of football, we do meet up. Yeah. And I think we would probably be outcasted if not.
That says a lot, Laura,
The day he got punched, his friend from football turned up with a bottle of Prime for him.
Oh,
at the door, and his face was still red, raw and swollen from crying, and his friend turned up, and he ended up staying, and we did some pumpkins for Halloween, and we ended up making a day of it. But that shows, they've had to deal with him. They stop a play from him being punched, and they're having to deal with that all the time. When Fletcher's laid on the floor needing acknowledgement that he's been fouled, they just want to get on with the game, but they don't. They do react well. I mean, sometimes, they even say pass the ball. They do it. Everybody does.
Yeah, they do.
I think the fact that we're all still friends outside of football, and we're even meeting up with the parents this Saturday for a Christmas night out, and that we're still in the group, and he is accepted.
Brilliant.
I definitely do think the football side of things, they've got used to it, and I do think he's accepted. But James doing this presentation, I think they'll understand it a bit more. Like we were saying, there's different traits. Noise, smells,
sensory
processing things. So Fletcher, when he's playing football, constantly plays with his socks. So he's trying to play a game and he's pulling his socks up. He can't stand the feel of the long socks.
No.
So he's messing all the time with these socks, and that's definitely a sensory issue.
Yeah, it is.
When he was diagnosed, they did say it's ADHD combined with some ASD traits.
Yeah.
So I think the ADHD is definitely outweighing the ASD.
And the ASD is autism spectrum disorder for everybody out there.
So I think little things like that, and he don't like tags on his underpants.
No.
So, I have to cut all the tags out of his underpants. They irritate him. Just little things like that.
It is, yeah.
I don't think get in the way of every day, but if you watch a video back of him playing football, he will have probably, I think my husband counted 11 times he'd messed with his socks. Yeah, he only plays, I think, 45 minutes at the minute.
What we've just found with Jude is he doesn't do his sock, but what he does, it's like he's got something in his mouth, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And he's been biting his lip inside his lip, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's just like a, to the what is it now?
I think it's
What's it called?
I think when they're anxious, that's what they do. So Fletcher bites his nails.
Yes.
And he clicks his fingers.
Yeah.
But the clicking of the fingers he's become quite obsessed with. I don't think he even knows he's doing it. but it worries me because it's constant. So what I've done is my sister's actually ordered me some of the chewy necklaces because I think if he's not putting his fingers in his mouth and chewing his nails, it might take him away from forgetting he's got fingers in a way to be clicking.
No, it's true. It's true.
So I'm going to give it a go. I don't know the answer, but the biting of the nails I used to do as a kid as well. And I only stopped when I get my nails painted just purely so I don't bite them.
I know what you were saying. Yeah, I know. I need to do mine
like
again.
Fletcher's are so sore at the minute. I almost don't mind the biting of the nails as much, but the clicking of the fingers, feel like, is he going to do something to his joint? I don't know.
Like arthritis in future.
Even at home when he's calm and he's constantly, and he's touching, and I'm like, So I just thought maybe if that can take it away, he might stop doing that and find something else, because even fidget toys, he's still clicking his fingers.
Really?
Yeah,
right.
Especially at school.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point he was clicking his neck at school. He wasn't doing it at home. His teacher said, look, he's starting to click his neck. And I said, right, we need to get on that because I don't want
But
yeah, he was just literally sat there clicking his neck. And I said, if he becomes obsessed with that where he doesn't even realise he's doing it, I said, so luckily that was just for a couple of weeks.
Just shows how it can escalate, and like going right back, if you like, is like, school not letting you know about certain things, like he's not been in a music class and what have you. I feel like that is not okay.
No.
I think, like as the coach, the football coach, as being supportive, as being involved with you and your family, that is what it needs to be with school. Like, you need to be on the same page. It can't be that something's going on at school and you don't know about it. This is their safe place at home, or hopefully any child should have a safe place. So he could come home and tell you those things. And if they don't feel if they don't like with Jude, he don't really say much. It's not very much I get out from him. He'll tell me left field, like, oh, last week this happened. Oh, okay. Well, did you not think? Oh no, it never went into. It never came into my head. So I just think to have that sort of, that communication with school, don't have to be like War and Peace, but just like a few little notes. Right, today's been a little bit dysregulated. He's been a little bit out of sorts, whatever. Then I don't like the not knowing. I find that really difficult.
We've never really had that with school, and I think for Fletcher, even from being at preschool, he has. So again, going back, we always thought he had an attachment issue with me. So we used to think, he'd cry. Obviously, every morning when I was dropping him at school, he'd cry and he'd have to be like sometimes physically pulled away from me, and I'd be like, right, come on. And then you go through every year thinking, next year he'll probably go in by himself. But this started at preschool and then reception. So Fletcher has always never really settled at school anyway. But then I think once they get him in and they sit him down, they say in their white words, he's fine. We're in year 5 now and we're still struggling to get him into school. So to me, why haven't they picked up on things earlier? Why is he so unsettled? Why doesn't he want to come to school every day? What is causing this? So again, but I did put it down to it's his attachment with me. So, as silly as it sounds, like I breastfed him. I didn't go back to work till he was 2.5, and I used to think, is it because he was just with me all that time?
You question everything.
Yeah, all these. I had an excuse for everything, and even his emotional side from being a baby. He, at 9 months old, when he wanted to crawl, he used to scream his head off, and it'd be like, once he's crawling, he'll be okay. And then next thing, it was like, well, he's crawling, but he's still screaming. It's because he wants to walk. Once he's walking, it'll be okay. And it was always like said, it's because of this, it's because of this. But even at such a young age, and don't get me wrong, I know babies can't regulate their emotions, but with hindsight now, looking at things that have happened through the years before I realised it was ADHD, I can see it now.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't know these traits. I didn't know there was, it wasn't just hyperactivity. So, my sister mentioned yesterday, I used to be worried looking after him because if anything happened where he fell, he wouldn't want anyone else to comfort him but you. So if you weren't there, his reaction to hurting himself was so over the top. You'd think, does that even hurt? But he'd be screaming. And then if I weren't there to comfort him, there were he wouldn't let anyone touch him. Get off me. Because it overreacts. Because it's like, why have I thought somebody's just tripped me up? It's like, it was an accident. No, it wasn't. They've done it on purpose. Yeah. But it's how he perceives it because of the rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So Fletcher's two main traits, massive ones that affect him, because everybody's different, are his emotional regulation and the rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And they probably come into play every single day.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
Laura. What are the sort of main symptoms of the condition that you
Yeah.
deal with? But you've pretty much
Yeah.
answered that. And
Yeah.
and I think that is in a lot of people, and
Yeah.
the RSD and
Yeah.
what have you.
Yeah.
The sensory processing. Like Jude was always a child. He could not stand listening to a hand dryer.
Right.
He were
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it were like that, and it's like a pain signal into
Yeah.
in the brain.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like, you know, and if a car whizzes past or a motorbike, even now it's like a literal.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, has it gone?
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm
Yeah.
safe now. I'm okay. And he's still like that now.
Right, okay.
And I think as he's getting older, he's getting a little bit more embarrassed because he's always wearing defenders at, like, you know, football
Yeah.
games and things.
Yeah.
Now it's not very cool to wear your defenders, and you know,
Yeah.
and he just, you know, so we're in that sort of, you know, he's not a teenager, he's a tweenager, but
Yeah.
you know, he's certainly aware more aware that, you know, his friends don't have those things.
Yeah.
And you know, and he's taken it on board very well. He has, like, we've explained it to him as best we can, and, you know, told him about people in the public eye who's got it, mainly footballers and
Yeah.
things like that. And I think I'm hoping that's kind of helped him. You know, and already he's only been up at the high school since September. He's met some new friends, which is all lovely.
Yeah.
3 of his friends have said to him, I think I've got ADHD.
Right.
And it's just, you know, I just feel like it's becoming more prominent, and I think it's a buzzword for some, I've got to say.
Yeah.
But overall, like, I just think we've got more awareness.
Yeah.
What we're doing now, you know, is to raise awareness and to you know, to try and help people. That's, you know, it's just something that I feel really strongly about, and you're here, so, and obviously you do too. And I just think, you know, it's just going to become more and more, and that's what I've said to Jude, like, you're just going to find this happens more and more often.
Yeah.
Even like a year ago, 18 months ago, shall we say, it wasn't as prominent as now.
Yeah.
And even like schools and stuff, like you've just said, they didn't pick up on anything.
No.
They didn't pick up on Jude having holes in his jumper.
Yeah.
His collars were sodden, like disgusting, like filth, disgusting. Because he needed something to just, like, you know, to regulate himself and things like that. Now he's up at the high school, it's slightly different. You know, he's allowed fidget toys, but oh no, he daren't. He daren't. So that's so this is where we are right now. You know, from year 6 to now, just the last 3 months he's been up there.
Yeah.
He's like, he can't get out a fidget toy because he don't want, you know, his mates to be like laughing or, you know, and he can't see whatever we say, like, this is going to help you. Like, you know, if you do it, maybe someone else looks at you and thinks, oh, well, it's okay because Jude's done it.
Yeah.
He can't do, you know, and I just feel like he's going to struggle even more in classes as it's going on, because he's not medicated. No, he hasn't got a diagnosis yet. We're still waiting on that. But you know your child, like I've just said, you know your child, trust it. He's got like nearly every symptom. And you know, and I've gone from feeling like medication, no, not for my child, not for my child. And you know, but then when we did that course again, we had a full, you know, we didn't quite go to plan, did it? But we had a full like session on that. And do you want to talk a little bit about that for
so
Fletcher?
I was exactly the same, Natalie. I just wanted the diagnosis, I think, initially, so that I could say, this is why he does this. Please don't judge him. I think we were going to football, and because this is where mainly Fletcher were kicking off, we're at football. So we were going to football, and I was like, oh, this is doing it because he's got ADHD. And so I think I wanted that diagnosis more for everyone else at the time. Because I'm like, please understand, I know he's a nice boy, and, you know, and anyway, so we got the diagnosis, and they said to me at the time, you know, would you like to medicate? I'm like, absolutely not. I don't want to change my child. You know, I just want people to know why he acts like this. And then basically for years, Fletcher had been coming out of school, and when I picked him up, he used to jump on me, throw his bag. He'd had such a bad day in how he perceived it. And so what I did was, initially I bought him a journal, and it's called the Big Life Journal. And when you open it up, it's
I think
every day.
Jude's got that.
So they try and they want you to list like a few good things that's happened
That's
in
right.
your day. So it's supposed to be positive.
I
So I
know.
thought, it's coming out of school negative. Let's try and find every night. So I put him to bed on a night and I'd be like, right, let's fill this journal in. And it'd have like, 5 faces, and it'd range from being happy to sad
Got the
or
same,
whatever.
yeah.
But every night now it turned into negative.
Mm.
So I couldn't, he'd focus only on, even if one bad thing had happened that day, he'd focus on that. And he couldn't find a positive in every day. But it got to the point where even I were frustrated, because I'd be like, we could have had a day, it might not even been school, we might have had a fun day, family day out. And, and something, I'd have put him off and upset him that day. And he'd focus on that. And I'd even be like, we've had this lovely day, and you're just focusing on that one negative. And I was like, why is this happening? And it were mainly school, coming out, oh, this has happened today, and he'd be crying, and then at bedtime he'd cry about it, not want to go to school the next day. So I just thought, you know what, I think maybe if we try the medication and he's not struggling as much at school, because he'd perceive he'd got his hand up at school all day, and he'd say, I've had my hand up for help all day and the teacher ain't come to me. And it's like, I know that ain't true.
Yeah.
He's perceived it that way.
Yeah.
That's how he feels.
Yeah,
he'd be so upset about it. And he'd say, I've had it on my hand up all day and she didn't come to me. And I'd be like, she can't not have come to you. But so I just thought, if we try it. So we started on Medicanet 10 mils in May. After 2 weeks, it went up to 20 mils. So then we stayed on the 20 mils until beginning of July. So when I spoke to his teacher, she said, it's definitely made a difference. She said, I do think it's wearing off around 1 o'clock.
Right.
She says, because it becomes a bit more vocal and a bit more fidgety around that time. She says, but up to that point, he's so much more focused. So we're like, oh, great.
Yeah.
That's good. So we upped it to 25 then, because 30.
Right.
Because we thought maybe then it might last a little bit longer, because so Medicanet's an 8-hour stimulant.
Yes.
But depending on your metabolism, obviously it can come out of your system a bit quicker. So if Fletcher were having it about 8 o'clock in the morning, it was coming out of his system about 1, which is slightly earlier.
Right.
So we went to 30, but because it was July and school were winding down for the summer holidays, and there were a lot more fun activities going on, the teacher found it difficult to know whether the medication were working or whether it would just because he was getting his natural dopamine from being happy.
Yeah.
So we finished school, at the end of July, and then I don't medicate Fletcher through the holidays or at weekends. So I let him just have a bit of a break.
Yeah.
So the whole of the 6-week holidays, I didn't medicate him. And to be honest, we had the best summer. I don't necessarily, I can put up with, the odd meltdown or whatever. And I think when he's at home anyway, he's happier because a lot of these triggers come from school. So I didn't feel we needed to medicate him. And then he went back to school in September, back on the 30. Now, this new teacher, obviously, I'd never known him prior to.
Right.
So she was basically saying he's really focused, he's getting all his work done. And I said, well, the problem is he's still not wanting to come to school, so there must be something. And she's like, no, he's fine when he's here. I'm like, well, it's getting really difficult to get him to school. No, he's fine. So, but we did get his school report last week, and Fletcher has always been a few terms behind.
Oh, yes, you said this.
So they mark him on reading, maths and writing, and then it's termly. And Fletcher is now working at the age-related expectations for reading and maths, so he's exactly where he needs to be. And he's only a term behind in his writing. So I've got to say the medication, that is proof the medication is working. So I think it's focusing him.
Definitely.
So he doesn't feel he's struggling, and then he's able to complete his work without getting stressed, and
But before that, what was he working? Was it like a few terms behind?
Yeah, it was a few terms behind. He's always been a few terms behind. And they put it that he's Fletcher's dyslexic, so I just always sort of put it down to that. And I thought he might always be a few terms behind. It's just the way it is. But for him to jump now to actually exactly where he needs to be, that's got to be the medication. I can't see what else it could be. So he's clearly able to focus, on that one thing. And his teacher actually used the word hyperfocus, which is what ADHD people do. So she's saying he's actually quite hyper-focused on his work. And I have found when he's coming out of school, he'll say, Mummy, I did some English today. It was so easy. Well, I've never heard that from him. It's always been, I didn't know what I was doing, and I put my hand up, and I've had my hand up all day.
Yeah.
Now it's like, and I did this maths, and I got through the questions really quickly. So you know, we are finding that it's definitely working. I mean, the rejection dysphoria does come in again sometimes because at the minute Fletcher hasn't got his pen licence.
Right.
So the teacher is trying her best to praise him for his handwriting and say, yes, that's great. But then he's coming out saying to me, you know, she's telling me my handwriting's great, but I still haven't got my pen licence. And she's so upset about it because he takes it so literally. So it's like, she's saying my handwriting's great, so why haven't I got this?
Yeah.
So it's finding a way to word things so he doesn't, you know, take it so literal and then misunderstands why he's not ready to have it yet.
That is totally part of the condition, being literal in it.
So literal. And then like with the star of the day, you know, it's like, I've done everything that you know, I need to do to get star of the day and I've not got it today. I'm like, well, there is other children that deserve it as well, but I've tried my best and I've done. I'm like, that doesn't mean the teacher doesn't think you've tried your best, but that's how he perceives it. That if he doesn't get star of the day, you've not tried hard enough.
And what I find as well, like, even though, you know, you're trying to like reason with them or you're trying to, you know, put a positive spin on something, it don't go in.
No, they can't.
It doesn't go in. And then that gets frustrating because
you're trying to stay calm while explaining it.
And I just feel like, and I'm saying something and then he just talks over me and says something. And I'm like, you didn't obviously hear anything that I just said.
He's the same.
And he's just like, well, what did you just say? Anyway, everything's wrong. I'm shit. And it's just like, whoa, just calm down. Like this morning, you know, it's snowing today. And he were in a flat because I can't watch school in this. How am I supposed to watch school in this? And look at the state of it. And like, I'm going to be late for school and, you know, and all this sort of stuff. I should be off school today. Injustice of it. And I'm like, Jude, you and millions of other kids will not want to go to school right now. You don't want to get out of bed. Guess what? You're going. That's it. You know, and I just have to shut it down. Because sometimes if I'm just putting his, you know, to put my arms around him, makes him worse. I've got to just that tough love, get on with it, shut up, move on. You know, but it is difficult, you know, and you've got to pick your battles and you've got to try and, you know, work with whatever you're going through at that, you know, at that point. Like I was saying to you just off camera before, like I had Jude come home from school earlier on this week. I'd had a really bad day. We'd fallen out in the morning. He'd gone to school in a bad mood and then he just stayed there. He just stayed in a bad mood for 6 hours. Didn't want to speak to anybody, didn't want to do anything, you know, and then he came home totally dysregulated, started, you know, throwing things and hitting things and, you know, screaming. And it was just the part I feel really awful for him because they don't understand what is going on. They don't understand why they're feeling this anger because it's not justified really. No. You know, it isn't, you know, it is to them, but they don't, but he also he doesn't understand. And I'll say, right, why are you angry? Don't know, just just has anything happened? No, nothing's happened. Okay. And then I'm just like, what do I do with it now? What do I do? Do I carry it on? Do I just kind of leave him? We're all in that. We're at this point at the moment. We're a little bit further down the line than maybe some people watching this, but certainly we have not got it all figured out. You know, and what would you? I mean, what do you do, Laura?
What a lot of people advice I've been given from mums in our position is, when they get home from school, I think because they've had to either mask or it's been stressful for them at school all day, it's not natural for them to be sat at a desk all day, sitting still. Moving. It is not natural for them. So you've got to imagine being told to sit there all day and do that when that's not what their body or mind wants to do. So they come home and they're actually probably physically exhausted from having to sit there and do that. So that's where you're saying they don't understand why they feel like that. They don't, because they don't know it's not natural for them to have to sit like that. So the advice I've been given, and I think it's definitely right, is to just, when they get home from school, if they want to go to the room and just be there on their own, even for an hour, just let them chill. You know, and we've been told not to ask questions. How's your day been? Don't ask them. Okay. You know, what have you done at school today? Don't ask them, because they don't want, they've not, you know, they're too tired. They don't want to answer those questions. They probably can't remember. You know, let them go. chill, regulate themselves, whatever they need to do, and then they'll come down. You'll probably see a completely different person. I think usually we pick them up. Oh, what have you done today? Because you want to show you're interested.
Yeah, because you haven't seen them for that long. You want to see,
A
yeah.
neurodivergent child who's struggled all day is just like, oh my God, why?
No more talking.
I've found with Fletcher in car on way home, I've said, oh, what have you done in maths today? I don't remember. Why are you asking me? And he's jumped down my throat straight away. And I'm like, whoa, I'm only trying to ask.
Yeah.
But that's because he's so tired.
Yes.
Doesn't know he is. And he's irritated.
Yeah.
And he just wants to get home and chill. And then when you've got a child like Fletcher who does like 1,000,001 sports, it's hard to get home and let him have that chill time. So we're usually getting home rushing. What I've found is, tea usually sets him off. So I'd be like, right, what do you want for your tea? I don't know. Not hungry. And I'm like, don't want you really going anywhere without something in your stomach to do training or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want anything. So I've just learned to just be like, do you know what? Okay, let him. If he wants to go and he goes to that training one day without, any tea, and then he finds he's hungry while he's training, it's a natural consequence that next time I might say, actually, Mum, can I have just a little bit of a snack and I'll have my tea when we get back?
Yeah.
And that is what we've found. So like now he might just have a little bit of a snack, and then he'll go to training and he'll do his training. And then when he's absolutely starving, then when he gets back and he will actually eat his tea. But I was sort of almost forcing him to have tea. Yeah. Because I was so worried that he was training with nothing in his system.
I know. And does it affect his mood?
It does affect his mood. He does get hungry. He does. Massively does.
We all do as well in our house, which is unfortunate, but he's just the same.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, and honestly, the difference in him when he has had something, he's like a Duracell bunny. Then he's gone from like, and he's ready to go. But then trying to, if he's on PlayStation or if he's on his phone and he's hyper focused, there is nothing that I can do to get him to eat. I'm like, I put like a plate next to him, just there, and leave it and just see if he wants to eat. And sometimes he'll have like a little nibble. Yeah. And then I just think, just the same as you, I am at that. I'm like, well, you don't want to take a coat, just go, well, if you don't want to go to a coat, you don't want to take a coat, just go in -2 weather. That's more for you. Yeah. But hopefully the next day you are going to think, actually.
It's a natural consequence, and I truly believe that. So children with ADHD, when I said earlier about we were being consistent and nothing were changing, so the coach were being consistent, we were being consistent. Fletcher's got older brothers and sisters, and we parented them the same, and it had worked, but it wasn't working for Fletcher. That would have been like, why isn't this working? Yes. Yeah. So now I've learned that parenting the same as, neurotypical children isn't going to work. Telling them how to do something, they're not going to do it. They're going to do the exact opposite. So for example, this is where it does work. So where we park on the school run, Fletcher can run across the field on a morning, but we walk around because usually the field's wet this time of year. Yeah. And a few weeks ago he said, Mum, I want to run across the field. And I said, but if you do, you'll get wet feet. I won't. So I said, okay then, because I thought, this is a natural consequence for him. He needs to find out. So usually I'd be like, no, you'll get wet feet. And we'd fall out. So I went, all right, if you don't think you will, that's absolutely fine. You run across. And he ran across and we met at the gates together and he went, Mum, and I said, what? He went, I've got wet feet. And he said, you were right. And it was such a breakthrough because he wouldn't usually ever admit that. Yeah. But because I'd been so calm with it, and I'd not forced it down his neck. And he just went, you were right. And I said, yeah, you've got wet feet.
And he understood that for himself. He learned a lesson there.
And then that were about 3-4 weeks ago. And then this morning, because it was frosty, he went, Mum, it's frosty. Can I run across? And I said, yep, but just be careful because it might be slippy. It won't be. I went, well, I'm just letting you know. And he ran across and he was like, I'm fine. I'm like, yep. So he has learned, so he doesn't even go across the grass when it's wet. He's seen this morning, it's frosty, I want to run across. Yeah. I'm going to go. So I know he's learned from that. Yeah. And then it is difficult. It's like you say, going outside if it's raining and they don't want to put a coat on, let them get wet. That's what the course told us. Let them get wet because next time they'll learn. So, but it's putting that into normal everyday scenarios. It's like the way Fletcher maybe treats his footy mates on the pitch when he's not meaning to be frustrated with them and things that come out of his mouth. That might mean they reject him, which luckily they haven't. But if they did, it would be a natural consequence. But for him to go through that pain of being rejected by his friends and then not wanting to be his friend anymore because of how he speaks to him on the pitch, that's quite painful for anyone to lose friends over something he can't help. Yes. Yeah. But that does happen. There's so many children with ADHD that
they don't have many friends.
They don't have many friends because of because of things like that.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and a lot of it is parents.
Mm.
I do think it's the parents' choice, not always the children's choice. I find a lot of kids gravitate towards Fletcher because he's the fun friend.
Right.
So, you know, when we're outside of football where he don't get frustrated and he's the fun friend and, you know, he might take risks and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I mean, we found at the cricket club the other week, he was stood, I don't even know how he'd done it, but he was stood with a sign on the wall saying, wave at me. And then they were counting everybody. They thought it was full and everybody that waved, but it was my child stood on the wall with this sign. But the kids thought it was hilarious because he had the, you know, the balls to stand
And
up
what's
and be
that?
like, wave.
It's a dopamine
Yeah,
fix, isn't
he
it?
was loving it.
Yeah,
and they
same
were
as
all
Jude,
happy.
yeah.
But he's the one taking the risk, stood on the wall, you know, stood there with this, you know, and we didn't even know. Oh my God, all parents were laughing, but you know, he's that fun friend,
Yes.
you know, and they do gravitate towards him.
Yeah.
But then obviously when things do happen, you know, it's hard. And
It's hard. It
it's
is.
so emotional when they do, if you know, the odd times they do fall out. You know,
Yeah.
it's like the world's ended
It
for
is,
him.
yeah.
You know, and everybody hates him, and you know,
It's like an all or nothing thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you've got everything's going well, everything's, you know,
Yeah.
rosy, or one thing's
Yeah,
crap
and
and
then
everything
that's it,
is
ruins
it's all
ruins
crumbled.
everything. You could have had the best day. We went to Lapland last year. So Lapland, it's to see Santa really, isn't it? But there's some fun activities while you're there.
Yeah.
So we're all excited, like we're going to go see the real Santa, all that, like, you know, it might be his last year, you know, where he believes or whatever. But because these fun activities were before our time slot with Santa, so he was sledging, doing all these risky activities where we're getting this dopamine.
Yeah.
And this is pre-diagnosis. This is where I'm
Right.
starting to think maybe he has.
Right.
But we could not, when it were our time slot, see Santa, we couldn't get him off the sledge.
Right.
Because he was loving it that much and he's getting this natural dopamine. He's taking a risk. He screamed and kicked off and didn't want to go see Santa. Like, paid all this money for this magical experience and he didn't even want to see him. So we're walking to see Santa and he's hysterical. And we're like, we can go back and we can finish. We've got all day. We'll go back. I want to stay doing this, because he wanted to go to the biggest hill, you know, and go down. You know, nothing frightens him. We went to Blackpool Pleasure Beach 2 years ago, so he'll have been 7. He went on the Pepsi Max.
Wow.
There were, you know, nothing scares him, which can be quite frightening for a parent, taking the risk. But that's where he gets these natural dopamines from. And that makes him focus. And, you know,
it's weird because that's so different. Like, this is one thing that doesn't resonate with you. He is so not a risk taker.
But he's
risk averse.
He might have more ASD traits.
Maybe.
So, like, my nephew's like that. So my nephew is autistic with ADHD traits.
Right.
So he can be a little bit hyper in certain situations, but his autism outweighs the ADHD. So he wouldn't want to do that.
No.
You know, he did do this sledging and whatever, but he's a little bit more, I'm going to think about that before I do it. And I'm going to watch someone else
I'm on
do
the periphery.
that. Just check
I'm
that's
happy
okay
there.
first. I'm not sure we'd get him on the roller coasters and things like that. So it might be, you know,
maybe.
like I say, that, you know, if it's a mixture of both.
But then they always say, don't they, if you had 10 children lined up, they all present differently, don't they?
Well, I was talking to my sister yesterday. You know, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here.
Yeah.
Sam Thompson's on there. He's got ADHD. And I said, it's great he's on there and people are recognising he's got ADHD. Sam is portraying the Tigger ADHD that most people think you've got. He seems really happy, he's hyper, he's jumping around. But we're not seeing the dark side to ADHD.
No.
And I think Fletcher's traits, the two main ones, the emotional regulation and the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, are the dark side of ADHD. So that's what we're dealing with day to day. That is the, you know, the hard parts. That's not being portrayed on telly. So it's like, although it's great and everyone's seeing it, they're not seeing what we're going through still. So Sam hasn't had a meltdown, or, you know, he's not, you know.
He hasn't had a meltdown, but when he looks, sometimes he looks really low.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I do, and I keep thinking it's going to happen, and I don't want it to happen, because he's beautiful, he's a gorgeous soul.
I just said it might be a good thing, so people can see the other side, because in every day where he's so happy, ADHD isn't that in my eyes. It isn't a constant. Well, it can be for some children. That's where I'm going back to. Everyone's different, but he's also an adult that will have learned coping strategies we're going through, where our children have still got to learn those coping mechanisms.
Maybe he's on medication.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why he's on such a level playing field. You know, you don't know, do you?
And
they're not, and they have nobody's mentioned it. Everybody talks
Yeah.
about like, God, he's got bags of energy.
Yeah.
He hasn't said,
No.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
why have you not mentioned it? Like
Yeah.
you've done a documentary
Yeah.
solely on it.
Mhm.
Like, why are you not mentioning it?
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll come out.
Yeah.
Hopefully it will.
reminds me of one of my cousins, because I've got an adult cousin that's got ADHD, and he reminds me of him. And
Yeah.
that's why when I was going through this with Fletcher, I thought, Fletcher can't have ADHD because he's nothing like my cousin, because that's how I thought. You know, my cousin's like this way. He's like Tigger. He were always happy, jumping around, really hyper. Well, Fletcher's not like that all the time. You know, he's just a bit emotional, you know. But then once again, when I looked at all the traits, I just couldn't believe the traits. I couldn't believe how many. I think Fletcher's probably got like 15 or 20 traits. I just thought ADHD were hyperactivity.
Well, you would do.
You know, that's genuinely
do.
what I thought it was. I didn't even know about the inattentive type, which is the, you know, you're all sort of in your own mind, aren't you?
Yeah.
The busyness is in your mind and not with your body.
Absolutely.
Didn't know about that. You know, so I didn't know about masking.
No.
You know, I've learned so much.
Yeah.
About it.
And we need to that's exactly why we're doing this.
Yeah.
But what I would say, people, is this book
The best book.
is the Bible. Right? This, I mean, there's plenty of ADHD books out there, and I'm sure they're all great. This one for me, like, oh my God, I could not put it down, and I can't wait to read it again.
Yeah.
I've learned so much from this book. Sarah Templeton, I believe she's called. Yeah, she's on Instagram. I think she's got a Facebook page. You need to Google her. You need to go on. She is, I mean, she's like the guru, isn't she?
Yeah,
she knows everything. She's also ADHD herself.
Yeah.
So what she's saying, she's lived with all her life. She's in her 50s or 60s. But yeah, How Not to Murder Your ADHD Kid. Not the best title for me, but
terms,
she really does. Self-explanatory.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
And I just think, you know, you can see yourself like, look, it's just very. The chapters are only probably 2-3 pages. That's it. But it's very textbook easy. So I can't recommend that book enough.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So we've talked. I think we've covered, haven't we? Have you got any other advice or tips? I think
it's just the tips, isn't it? So when we sat down with Fletcher's coaches, what his coach came up with is, because ADHD children need constant praise, don't they?
So
for
need
every
rewards.
One negative comment, I think it's something like they need 10 positive.
Something like that, yeah.
Don't quote me, but it's something like that. So we constantly need to be praising them.
Yeah.
So what James came up with is, before the game, if he sends, well, Johnny, his other coach, and Matt, he's got quite a few coaches, Fletcher. So if one of them sends a voice note to him on, you know, just before the game,
to
Fletcher, hiya Fletcher, today I've got one target for you, and that's if when you're brought off to sub, can you just give us a high five? Because one of Fletcher's difficult thing is, when he's subbed, he thinks it's because he's done something wrong, and he usually just storms past everybody and takes. The thing is, he takes himself away now, which we've learned to leave him.
Yeah.
But at one point, we'd all flog round him, and it'd make him worse.
Yeah.
So we now know, and the coaches know, leave him, and he will always come back when he's calmed down.
Yeah.
So his target might be, give us a high five today. And then if he does that target in the game, they then send a voice note after the game, and they praise him for being able to do that target, and they praise him for anything else he's done that game.
Amazing.
So this started, I'd say, about 3-4 weeks ago. And I think his first target was something like, you know, if one of your teammates does something well, can you give them, like, you know, a well done or whatever. So anyway, so these have been the little targets. And do you know what? I'll be honest, he plays twice a week. He plays on a Saturday and a Sunday. The Sunday games, his behaviour always seemed to be a lot worse. And I don't know if it's because, I don't know, just like grassroots parents are a little bit more feisty.
True.
And
true.
He's waiting. He plays left wing. He's quite a fast player, so he's always on.
Does Jude.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he does.
So he's always at the parents' side,
Yeah.
you know. So I think when opposition parents, you know, might even, no, I don't think people always mean to say negative things, but maybe if he does do a bad foul or whatever, and he'll hear them and he reacts to what they say. So it's like probably not the best position for him, but that is his best position.
Yeah.
So he sort of can hear him, and you know, and then he'll kick off or whatever. So it's like, you know, can we give a bit of praise to your teammates, or can you do this? So anyway, I would say the last 3 grassroots Sunday games he's had, he has been like a different child. Now, I don't want to jinx it. I just cannot believe it. Not so much on the Saturdays, like he's sort of had a couple of meltdowns on the Saturdays, but on the Sundays. And then the feedback they are then giving him, he's absolutely elated with, because he's like, oh, I've done something right. So it's only the one target. And even if he hadn't met that target, it's still got to be positive praise they're sending about something else he's done positively.
Yeah.
And it really has worked. So the last game, he came up, we usually come off, and he's like,
tell me about it.
And then we're in car and we're trying to be positive. And he came off, and I tell you what helped, and I've messaged this coach, but some under 15s, Norristhorpe players, were waiting to come onto the pitch. So they were all stood at the side, and they don't know any of our players from Adam. And Fletcher were running with the ball, and they were like, wow, look at that kid. Oh, and Fletcher could hear him. And they were like, oh, he's going to megs him, he's going to do this. And they were, to say they were under 15s, their attitude towards younger players was amazing.
That's gorgeous.
So when he scored, they all started jumping up and down. I've never seen teenagers act like that. They were jumping up, he's great him. Because he could hear it, he was absolutely buzzing.
Oh,
so he came off, and then that attitude, it was the same with his players. Do you know? So then,
yeah, because it's a knock-on effect, good and bad.
So he came off and went, Mum, I felt like I had my own, what did he say? Fan club.
Fan club, yeah.
He says, Mum, I felt like I had my own fan club today. Did you hear him? And I was like, yeah. All the way home, he was absolutely suited. And he wasn't even talking about how he'd played. It was them, and, I was like, oh, wow. I would love to come away from that, a football game like that every week. Because usually I'm coming away nearly in tears.
I know.
So
tell me about it.
Away, and I hunted down that coach, because Fletcher plays for White Rose, not Norristhorpe. This was just a random team that were waiting to play. So I have a friend who's a coach for Norristhorpe at under 11. So I messaged him and I said, is there any way you can find? I mean, I actually thought they were older. I said, I think they were maybe under 17s.
Yeah.
But they were at Cliff at this time today. Anyway, found the coach, gave me his number, and I messaged him.
Oh,
and
that's
I just
lovely.
said, I've got to say, those boys that you coach, all of them were amazing with younger players. They didn't need to do that.
No.
They didn't even need to watch.
Yeah.
They could have got on with the warming up and been like, oh, it's younger kids, who's interested? I said, I really, really can't believe how great they were, and I just wanted to put that across. And he came back and he said, thank you so much for that. I'm so proud of them.
Yeah.
Can I put this message in the group? I said,
absolutely.
So I just said, look, without going into it, I said, my son's got ADHD. I said, and he does struggle with his emotions. I said, but today they've made him so happy. And he was like, oh, that's amazing.
I think I'd cry. I think I would, honestly.
Yeah. It would just, to come home and just have that happy Fletcher in the car, rather than, him kicking off and being upset over something. So then both coaches sent him a positive voice note that day, to give him them, and he was like, oh, I loved it.
I think that as coaches, because I know what James does, and I know how busy he is, to take that time, to do that, really, I bet that means a lot to you.
Well, I think
because
I think last year,
and obviously to Fletcher, of course.
Last year we were feeling like, is he even wanted in this team? We knew a couple of parents had made complaints, we didn't know who. So we were starting to think, is this the right thing for him?
Yeah.
Is a team sport right for him? Because Fletcher also plays cricket, and we weren't at that point having any of this behaviour at cricket. Again, he was undiagnosed at that point, so we didn't really get it, and we just thought, is football the issue? So we were starting to get to a point where it's like, is this it? Are we gonna? And James stepped in, and it just shows how much James actually thinks of him as a player, and Johnny and Matt as well. For them to be willing to give up their own time. And I've constantly said to Johnny's the one that sees him most, and we've said for the last 3-4 years to Johnny, we really do appreciate what you do. Like, my husband's a cricket coach, we know how hard it is, and to have Fletcher act the way he does at times, and to actually understand why now, because I think before it was probably frustrating for Johnny. Why is he acting like this? And I think Johnny and James at one point didn't like the fact that Fletcher used to run to me. And I think there's sometimes maybe thought I enabled his behaviour, but now he's got that diagnosis, and now I can explain why he probably used to come to me. I was his safe place.
Yes.
He felt at that point, he perceived that he was under threat.
Yeah.
Even though Johnny was like, yeah, you can trust me, I'm here. If anything happens, I'm here. But if a parent shouted at him, he wanted to come to me, you know, even though Johnny was the first one behind him, do not speak to my playing like that, you're going to be asked to leave. He wanted me.
Yes.
Or if he was brought off, he wanted me.
Yeah.
And I think it looked a bit like our mummy cuddling him, or, you know.
It want that, and they know that now.
Whereas now they know, and he doesn't always run to me now, he takes himself away. So what I've said is, if he misses 10, 15 minutes of the game because he's gone, that's a natural consequence. Don't you worry, leave him. He will come back over. It happened last Saturday. A player was almost strangling him, and he just couldn't cope with, you know, the pressure of this kid, and not the referee wasn't blowing. So he ended up kicking the ball out of the actual arena and stormed off. But it was like, just leave him then. Yeah. We had enough players, put someone else on. I even left him for 10 minutes, and I thought, oh, actually, usually he's gone up by now and gone back over. Yeah. So I did go over, and he said, I'm not, because I'm going to be in trouble. And I said, you're absolutely not. Johnny and James will not be cross at you. No. You know, they understand. They won't. So what we ended up doing was we counted to 10 together. Right. We fist pumped, and then I said, and he wanted me to come in and walk him over. And I said, I can't come in there. No. I genuinely can't, otherwise I would. But I will watch you. So he says, count to 10 with me and I'll go. So we did. And then we fist pumped. And he walked over. And then
so he's learning coping skills himself.
I think letting him calm down on his own. Ignore what comes out of his mouth when he's ranting. Because, oh my God, he doesn't half rant when he's cross and frustrated. Just ignore it. He genuinely sometimes don't mean anything he's saying. And I don't even think he knows what he's saying.
No, I don't. You know, Jude's like that.
No, everybody's against me. They're all asking me to pass ball. And he genuinely couldn't at that point. You know, there were 3 players marking him. There were no way he could have got out of it. And, you know, his players like, pass. And they're probably just saying pass, but he's perceiving it as pass the ball, you're being greedy. Yeah. And I don't think they necessarily were, but he's perceiving it that way. So he thinks everybody's at him. Yeah. And he just booted the ball out, and it was like, oh, you know. But he took himself away, and I think it's just learning.
He is.
You know, he knows what he needs. I mean, at cricket in the summer, so like I say, we never really had it at cricket. And then it's slowly this summer come in. And cricket, there's a lot more upper class people around, and they, you know, one coach actually said he was going to ban him, get him banned. He was reported twice for another game. We had a cup game where Fletcher's at an under 11. So in under 11's hardball, if you're out and it hits the wickets, you do stay in. You just lose points. It's better for Fletcher to be out where you walk off the pitch if you're out, because then he can go away, calm himself down. He's frustrated you're out like anyone would be, but when you have to stay on the pitch, all he's thinking about is, I've just got out, I don't want to get out again. He usually gets out again then. Because he can't,
he's in his head.
Can't come back from it.
No.
So we're in this cup final, and we're chasing this score, and he genuinely in his mind thinks, I'm the best player. It's the pressure's all on me. I've got to go out there and get these runs, otherwise we're going to lose. That's not it. He's in an amazing team. Yeah. All those boys can play, but in his mind he thinks, I'm the best. I've got to go out there. I've got to win this game for him. I don't, you know, it is how he thinks. Yeah. So before he would go out, I could see he was starting to shake, and there were some boys on the opposite team that play for Yorkshire, and they know Fletcher now. So they're like, oh, Fletcher Fortis is here. I'm going to bowl at him. Well, Fletcher were playing up at that point, so they're older than him. So he's already probably worried.
He's already started.
He goes out thinking, oh my God, this Yorkshire player is going to bowl at me. I'm going to get out. Lo and behold, he gets out. Well, it were neutral umpires, so 2 men that don't know Fletcher. Usually his dad's an umpire, and and he got out anyway. He were fine, but then he got out again, and that were it. He were like crying, and the umpire were like, right, calm down. And he said, leave me alone. He was very clear, and he said, leave me alone. Well, I think the umpire thought he were being rude. Right. And he didn't. So Fletcher went, leave me alone. Everyone could hear it really clear. He didn't. He said, calm down, young man. Well, that's just, no. Next minute, bats in air, helmet's off, I'm not playing. This is a cup game, cup final. Wow. So me and his dad are just like, oh, no. Because instantly we're thinking, we don't want him to let everyone else down. We're in a cup final. So he storms off into changing rooms. Everyone's like, what's going on? The opposition parents weren't very nice. They were all laughing. The kids at the time, the opposition kids were okay at the time, but the parents weren't very nice. So my husband went in, calmed him down, and actually managed to get him back on the pitch. And it were really lovely because the opposition kids clapped him back on the pitch. But unfortunately, he got out again, and it won't go well. We won the game. We ended up winning the game, but they actually put a report in against him to say that if he hadn't done that, they may have won, and that the pause in the game of play may have caused them to lose, which it didn't, because our team had to pause as well.
That's poor losers,
and so they basically reported him to the league.
Oh my God.
And at the time, the league said, well, we don't really know how to handle this. And I'm so grateful because the Steve Holiday, who's his heavy woolen coach, was at that game, and he's part of the league. And he said, let me, speak to the parents. I know Fletcher because he plays under me for heavy woolen, and he's just been diagnosed with ADHD, and they're in the titration period for his medication. So they haven't quite got it right yet, and it just caused mood swings and things.
Yeah.
And so please just understand that. If it hadn't have been for him, I genuinely think that league may have banned him because they just wouldn't have understood why he threw his bat. And so that were the 1-1. And then another game where a coach said, I'm going to have him banned from the tournament because, again, he threw his bat when he was frustrated. And, my husband had to say, look, he does have ADHD. And he's like, trying to, and it's like, no, but what I'll do is, he came to a compromise with him, which, looking back, I just think there shouldn't have really needed to be a compromise. No. But my husband said, I think there were supposed to be 6 games in this tournament. And he said, look, what if he misses the next 2 as a consequence? And I accepted that at the time because, we just wanted him to play and not be banned. Yeah. But really, I just think, in throwing his bat, he's dangerous. I totally get that. But if you look at how his mind works in that moment, he's not got something telling him, if you throw that bat, it's going to be dangerous, don't do it.
There's no consequence.
At that moment, he's completely lost it. He's impulsive. He can't think rationally.
No.
If that's explained to someone, maybe they might understand a bit more, but that particular person didn't at the time. So he did miss 2 games, and that was for West Yorkshire.
Wow.
So we were a bit gutted, but anyway, came back and he really did behave himself the rest of the season. All of his West Yorkshire teammates are amazing with him. The parents are like, we love him. He's, we need him in the team. They're absolutely great with him. And then when I did the video, when I made the video about Fletcher's traits, one of them just put, none of this matters to us. Fletcher is just Fletcher to us. And for someone to write that to me, it means so much because
absolutely.
I am always on edge
about
how people are going to perceive Fletcher and his behaviour. And for them to write that, and they've met Fletcher, 6 or 7 times, and for them to say that, it went the world to me.
Absolutely, I can imagine,
especially
Laura.
when you're playing at that level. Yeah. There's an expectation from you, and that is to do with behaviour.
Yeah.
And, if he's holding games up and he's having, meltdowns, people might just think, oh, that's a spoilt child having a paddy. His parents need to deal with him properly. And for them to say, no, he's just Fletcher to us, none of that matters, it was just like, oh, wow, that means the world to us.
I bet, I can really imagine.
I thought it was hard enough for me to put that video out there because it was so raw with the crying and showing, how he deals with things. And it's quite personal as well, personal traits, to him, that things that trigger him and whatnot. So it was, I was like, how are people gonna see
I don't think you realise how powerful that is.
Yeah.
Whether or not someone's messaged you or not, someone will be sat at home still feeling a little bit embarrassed about their situation and what to do. But watching that is like, wow, that makes so much sense. Like, I can't, you will have helped so many people.
I think putting it into a video rather than writing it down is showing out that it's real, because you can see Fletcher getting upset. You can see him jumping about, being Tigger on them days. Yeah. You can see that he doesn't sleep. I'm showing you all these things, and it's real. Whereas if I'm writing it down, I'm like, oh, Fletcher doesn't sleep. Fletcher doesn't, when you're actually seeing it. And that's why I did it.
It hits you differently.
And again, I think the real reason I did it sometimes was because of my own anxiety about how people perceive him. So I thought, if I could put this video together, they might just understand he's not naughty. And I'm still learning to let it go. I mean, I've heard people, people have actually come on a football pitch and called him disgusting. You know, he was 6-year-old. A football coach came on and pointed and shouted in his face. He's had so much, and those were from things, not even bad behaviour. That were from going in for a slide tackle and missing the ball and taking the kid out, and that was just purely getting his timings wrong. But how people perceive it was that he's being naughty and wanted to hurt that child. And it's like, no, he's so fast. He's gone in, completely mistimed it, missed the ball and took the kid out.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, you shouldn't be allowed on this pitch. He shouldn't be allowed to play. And at some points he was 6 and 7 year old.
Jesus.
You know, and me and Andy as parents have had to stand there and let that happen because we don't want to confront anyone else and get into an argument.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most recent incidents where an actual coach called him a little shit to his face through the game. Now, that was 2 days after Fletcher was diagnosed, and I was extremely emotional about him being diagnosed. And I got home and I said, I'm not going to report that coach because what if he's got ADHD and he ain't meant to say that and he's been impulsive. Now, I regret that now because what we did was we said, if he can apologise, this coach, then that's fine. We don't want to ruin his life. He's clearly giving up his time. You know, he'll hopefully learn from it. And he texted saying, oh, I'm sorry. So we said, well, no, is there any chance you can actually FaceTime Fletcher? So next time we play, he's not frightened.
Yeah.
And he just ignored us. And we actually went into a cup final against him. And Fletcher had to go into that cup final without a proper apology and play that game. And we lost. And Fletcher had the biggest meltdown. He wouldn't have a photo with his teammates. He wouldn't go up and get his medals. And I think may have acted like that anyway from losing a cup final, but I don't think that helped.
No,
knowing he were going in to play a team where a coach had called him that, when he called him a little shit, it was completely uncalled for. There is things Fletcher does because of his ADHD that you might perceive him as that. But that day, a child had actually pushed him first, you know, and Fletcher pushed him back, and the coach went, you little shit. And the game almost was abandoned over it. But because we were doing well, and we just went, look, it's okay. Fletcher doesn't seem completely upset about it. We'll just carry on. But I do regret now not reporting it because I think I do believe that coach wants sorry, and he probably meant what he said. And so, but I was so emotional at the time. I thought, no, what if he's an adult with it and he's been impulsive and he ain't meant to say it? And if I report him and he might lose his coaching
well,
role.
at least one of you's been open-minded because he wasn't. But only thing I could hope from that is that he, now knowing about Fletcher, might think differently about how he reacts next time. You know, we can only hope. We're never going to know. But it's so difficult. I mean,
but these are the things we've had to deal with at football. And I think that's why a lot of Fletcher's responses to things sometimes aren't just his ADHD, but I think it's the fight or flight, you know, that he goes into because of the trauma. Because you would not believe how many parents and coaches have actually shouted at him, you know, oppositions. So now he's waiting for it, especially on that left wing. And that's another thing his coach Johnny's noticed. It's like sometimes actually I'm going to move him over to right wing because the parents are being a little bit shouty today. I'm going to get him out of there. You know, so they're great and they are learning, but it's took us 4 years for us all to know. And that's one thing I said to Johnny is we're still learning as parents. I'm not going to judge you. No. You know, as long as you're calm with him and you know you don't, you know, he don't frustrate you. We're never going to judge you because you're volunteering and you're doing your best. But at least now we know why.
Absolutely, you know? and we'll end here, Laura. But this is where I feel that, you know, Fletcher's 9, you know, Jude's 11. I feel extremely grateful that we know right now about their condition. Like, if you think, like, there is so many adults that are just beginning to realise that they've actually got it, and they've struggled all their life, and they've never understood why, and they've never understood why they feel less than, or why their friends could do something easier than they, and they could never understand that. I feel like in our son's position, they are going to learn, they're going to grow learning about their condition, own it. They're going to have coping skills to deal with that. And, you know, in the future, there's always I always believe in science. I believe that things are going to, you know, there'll be different medication or there'll be something else that is going to help them, you know, and I just feel like they are in such a position. I know it's difficult right now. Of course it is. And it's going to be going forward for a little while. but they're going to go into an adult knowing and understanding themselves and
Yeah.
like being comfortable in their
Yeah.
skin. And I think there's nothing better than that.
No.
And what we're doing right now, we're learning for the next generation.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I just think, you know, the amount of awareness that needs to be out there is vast. It's getting there.
Yeah.
You know, but in our small bit now, we're doing, sorry, like in our small way, we're doing our bit now
Yeah.
to try and help
Yeah.
that. So, you know, I just think we've got to take something positive out of
Yeah.
that, and that is that, you know, our kids are gonna grow up to be comfortable in their skin.
I think so, and I
You
think
know,
as an adult,
confident.
these traits they've got now that might be looked down upon in children, actually in an adult. So being strong-minded,
Yeah.
injustice thing, not letting things go, defending others. People want
Morals,
you around.
yes.
You know, people that can stand up for someone. You want them as friends.
You're absolutely
So as an
right.
adult, and that's one big thing Fletcher does is he will defend a friend and get himself in trouble to defend them. Because the injustice, he cannot stand it. But as an adult, people are like, I want a friend like
You're
that around
right.
me.
You're
I want
right.
someone that'll stand up for me when I'm not wrong or whatever. At the moment, it might be a bit like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
at the park the other week, a child kicked one of Fletcher's friends. So Fletcher went over and kicked this kid back. And said, don't kick my friend. And that's going to get Fletcher in trouble as a child. But as an adult, if he stands up and defends his friends, you know, it's a great trait to have, isn't it? And,
is.
you know, so I think as adults,
Yeah.
I think if you're aware as a child that you've got ADHD and what it, you know, how it makes you a little bit different, I think, like you say, if you own it and you learn the coping mechanisms, as an adult, you'll be okay. But I think if you don't as a child, it causes a lot of distress as an adult
Absolutely.
because you don't understand why you feel the way you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully, because we've, you know,
Yeah.
they're no young, let's
I
hope
hope
they'll be
so.
okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, fingers crossed.
Thank you so
No,
much,
thank you for
Laura.
having me.
Really enjoyed it. It's been eye-opening. You've really, you know, you understand it clearly.
Yeah.
You understand your son extremely well, and that came across,
Okay.
you know, and I'm just so grateful to you. And I just think what we've done is people are going to sit at home watching it with their cup of coffee, with their kids, or saying, this is my child, or this is actually me.
Yeah.
This is me.
Yeah.
You know, that is, you know, it's powerful.
Okay.
It's, you know,
Hopefully I haven't waffled on too much.
no, I think it's a really important message that we're putting out there. So
Great.
thank you
No,
so
thank you for having me.
much.
Thank you.